Yes, it's yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, let's give it a go. So, building software is a team game. So thank you very much, Paul, for that excellent introduction before. I'll just say a few more words and also for the benefit of anyone watching the recording. So who is the full stack tester? I've held a handful of different roles in the quality and testing space. I've been everything from a test engineer to a quality manager, and now I'm a quality engineer at Ada Health. I've worked in different domains and on wildly different software stacks, from enterprise software to mobile apps. So I've kind of worked with everything from managing bare metal test labs and enterprise software all the way through to, the more mobile and web apps that you might recognize today. And I've got the privilege of working with excellent people and building software collaboratively. So I've had just over 2 years now at Ada Health, and over especially the last 18 months, I've been able to be involved in a lot of very collaborative work to build and test the software that we're producing. And I've been learning a lot about that as I go. So where to find me? I am on all the social medias, new and old, almost always as full stack tester, apart from LinkedIn, where you can use my name, Ben Dowen. And if you go to fullstacktester.com, you can see the link to all my socials on there, and you can follow my testing blog at Dowen Me UK. So a little bit of our playbook for today, just a little bit of an idea on what we're going to be covering. I'm going to be talking a bit about why building software is hard. I'm going to talk a bit about quality matters. Then we're going to go into building together, running ensembles, and I'm going to attempt to bust a few myths. So building software is hard. Building software is very hard. And there are a lot of different reasons for building software is hard, but one of the kind of core reasons, and I'll explain in a moment why this is so fundamental, is that in modern software testing teams, in my experience, there's a really big tension between independence and isolation. So what that I mean is that people are trying very hard to be independent teams that can deliver everything within that one team. But then you also have this kind of problem that ends up leading to teams being isolated when actually they need help. And in fact, that independence and that isolation is often very false, because it actually takes an awful lot of people to build and ship the software and the solutions and the products that we're working with. So even though you might attempt to make your team independent and isolated from the rest of the world, sometimes that's not as effective or as useful as you might think, and that can be a challenge. So I work in a team. The profile team that I work in has a whole load of different people working in different roles, and your teams in your context may look very different. And I also know, because I've worked in different companies in different structures before, that not everyone working in software testing, not everyone working in software development, work in a team where you have all these different people in the same team. It's very possible you might work in a team where you are a tester, you are a quality person, and you are in a quality team, or maybe you're in a data or a data person, you're in a data team. It's not always true that all teams and all companies are actually set up in a way where you have a team that is cross-discipline and you have lots of different people in the same team. The teams that I'm working in at the moment look an awful lot like this. Now, just because we've got a team of people who can do all the different things, build all the different things, it's also worth pointing out that we have problems, or can have problems in my experience, within the team where there is something happening called sub-teaming. There's something happening where effectively, even within the one team, you can get pockets of isolation where people are working on their own. And so, for example, even within the team that I'm in, we have almost like the front end sub team. We have two developers who are front end developers who often do work that's quite different to the back end developers. Similarly, we have data people who are doing work which sometimes is relatively orthogonal to the rest of the team. So there's a lot of opportunity within the team to have problems where, while it's great that we have all these different people in the team to help try and be independent and try and ship things together, you can end up with isolation where people end up working on their own or feeling like the work they're contributing is kind of separate from the rest of the team, and that can be a challenge. Similarly, there are great opportunities within the team to work collaboratively in a way that actually brings people of these different disciplines together, and there's some really big benefits from that, and that's some of what I'll be talking about today. And of course, it isn't as simple as just working within the team. The team that I'm in is one team of multiple within a group. And we have multiple groups of teams within a technology organization. And not all of those are even groups of delivery teams. We also have platform teams and other kind of groups of teams that make up the technology part of the company, what you might refer to as engineering. And even the engineering department, despite what we might think, are not the whole of the company itself. There are also other departments around the business, and there's more than the ones I've listed here. This is just illustrative. But the reason that I've called out marketing and regulatory is because in my context, building a health app that's a medical device, what we actually have is that the marketing team and the regulatory team are really important for us getting each individual release of the shipped product out to our users. So the marketing team write the text that goes in the app store to advertise the release. So despite all the rest of the work that they're doing for marketing that may be in some way independent, a lot of it actually isn't. A lot of it is working very closely with engineering. They're a different part of the organization, a different structure, but they're crucial for getting each release out of the work that my team is working on. We also have the regulatory department, as you might imagine. We have a kind of compliance burden working on a medical device, which of course we should. So again, the regulatory department has a fairly big part to play in getting our software out the door. So even if you make an attempt to have a team full of different people who have different disciplines and can do the work to build the software together, getting that software out the door takes many other people from the company to actually successfully go out the door again and again each sprint or each iteration that you're getting it out. And this is just an illustrative example of the context I'm in at the moment, but you probably have some similar dependencies that you may or may not have matched up or considered in the past. And then your company doesn't kind of operate in isolation. So my company definitely doesn't operate in isolation. We also have the regulators, we have the users, we have our competitors, we have partners, and you could go on mapping out the complicated system that we operate within for quite some time, and still be adding more. So this is to say that software testing is hard because while there are some benefits from independence, it takes not just a team, but actually many different teams working together to build software and to operate software and to get it out into the world successfully over time. Building software is hard because systems are complex and they have many moving parts. And this is systems of people, like the structure that I've just represented, and your structure may be different. And, maybe the structure of the company you're working with is a lot simpler. If it is, that's brilliant. I've worked in simpler structures in the past. I've also worked in structures that are way more complicated, where we've had thousands of engineers and tens of thousands of employees. And we've worked with partners and customers who themselves have hundreds of thousands of employees and tens of thousands of developers. So systems of people are very complex, and systems of technology can be very complex. You might have multiple different systems interacting, some of which are built by your team, some of which are likely built by other teams in your group or your organization, or built by dependencies that are third parties that you're bringing in, and they have their own release schedules and they have their own updates for security. Systems are complex, and they're complex because they involve a lot of different technology and they involve a lot of different people. And this is a quote here from the late great Jerry Weinberg, although his quote is obviously with a lot more nuance. It's always a people problem, right? So building software is hard because it's always a people problem. Now, there are a lot of different people who I just described there who are involved in getting the thing out the door. And any one of those people could be unavailable for any different reason. They could be having a bad day. They could be perhaps they're new to the company and they aren't trained in the particular procedure. They could make mistakes, right? And this is all completely normal. This is all part of the system that we work in. Eventually, it's always a people problem, and it's always a people problem because the software doesn't care that it's broken, right? So while we're building these systems, we're building these solutions. Ultimately, it's because we're solving problems for people, and when things go wrong, it's people that that this is a problem for the software, not the software itself. And building software is hard because goalposts move over time. So, finally, a sports analogy. Over time, the rules of the game change, right? Okay, you look at Formula One and you look at the fact that continuously, not just for each season, but even sometimes throughout the season, the rules change, right? You know, where is the white line? How many wheels do you have to have over it in order to be out? How close can your barge board be from the bottom of the track before you rub it so thin that you get disqualified? In software terms, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, part of the reason the goalposts move over time is because people's expectations move over time. Now, that might be the changing goals and priorities of the company that you're working in, but it might also be the expectations of your users. It might be that your competitor suddenly releases a feature that you weren't expecting, and you have no plans to release that feature. And now all of a sudden, you're less competitive than you were, not because you're doing anything different than you were doing yesterday, but expectations are changing over time. So you're operating, building software in a system that isn't isolated. This is also true if you're in a team that's building tools and services that support other teams within your company. It doesn't have to be an external force, but it could be that the expectations of your internal users change over time. So building software isn't an easy game. But working together, we can make things a little bit easier, right? We can combat some of that isolation that we feel and that we artificially put up by trying to have common goals within teams, within groups, within companies, and kind of coming together and crucially, not just having common goals, but working on the same things at the same time as a team, bringing our different knowledge together and working collaboratively. And I'll talk more about working collaboratively as the talk goes on. We can also help each other out by building empathy, okay? And building empathy for the different people and the different disciplines in our team. So this is breaking down things like the classic dev test relationships of old, where you had that kind of combative, oh, I'm going to find problems in your code, I'm going to break your stuff. We're working together for a common goal. We're trying to do things collaboratively. It's way better if you can bring people and work on things for the purpose of delivering good software, not for the purpose of kind of catching each other out. This, of course, gets more and more challenging depending on how the systems that you're working in are structured. But assuming you have any contact with the team that's building the software that you're testing, or any contact with the testers who are testing the software you're building, depending on which side of the wall that you're on, breaking down those walls and kind of refusing to throw things over walls and having empathy for the people in the other parts of your system will help make this a little bit easier. And it's also about finding a balance, right? Each team cannot themselves kind of fix and operate the whole system, right? We can't, when we're working in multiple teams and together building a solution that delivers some value to some users together, each individual team can't themselves do all the things, right? What we have to do is learn to work together across different teams so that collectively we're delivering something that's kind of coherent, that the user makes good use of. And that involves finding a balance between focusing on the team, focusing on your individual work and your role, and making sure you're breaking down those walls, you're building your network, you're considering you're the part of the system. So there's a balance between that kind of independence and that freedom to work across the organization. So now we'll talk a little bit about quality matters, and I want to talk about how quality matters from different perspectives. So part of building our empathy for the different people who work on the different parts of the systems that release our product is about understanding why quality matters differently to different people and for different reasons and from different perspectives. So a little bit of a definition of what I mean by quality, and a shout out on this one to Dan Ashby. We can think about quality, and this is the way we think about quality within Ada Health, in terms of correctness, usefulness, and goodness. So correctness is that adherence to requirements, whether those are implicit or explicit requirements. It's that, did we build the thing we intended to build? Did we meet the criteria that we planned to meet? Is it correct? And this is very important, but it's only one of three kind of key pillars of quality. And then the next one is usefulness. Okay, this is, does it actually help your users, your partners, whoever it is you're building the software for, get what they need to? Okay, now the story I like to throw out for this one, the analogy I like to use is, if you're a flower shop, right, and you're delivering people flowers, you could have the best website. The website is correct. You could have the perfect billing system. You could have the best marketing offers, right? And all the software involved in the process could be chef's kiss, perfect, correct as you designed it. But if there's a different problem in the process, if your delivery partner, who is actually doing the logistics of delivering the flowers to the customer, is afraid to leave the fresh flowers on the doorstep and takes them away if the customer isn't there to receive their flowers, and then the flowers end up in transit or in warehouses, and the flowers don't make it to the person on time, and they basically, if the person doesn't get what they need, the whole thing's useless to them, right? So it doesn't matter if your software is correct, if the product you're delivering, if the solution you're offering isn't actually useful, it doesn't actually get to delivering the value for your end users. And there's lots of different contexts that this can work out for. So it's got to be correct and it's got to be useful. And then you've got the goodness aspect of quality. So you've got this kind of emotive response. Is it nice to use? Is it easy to use? But you've also got that kind of, does it do good, right? So it can be correct and useful. You could argue Bitcoin is correct and useful. Now, depending on your point of view, is it good? So there's an interesting point here about the kind of ethical side of building software, and the fact that I was just reading an article recently about how the energy requirements it takes to run Bitcoin are greater than most small countries, which is pretty ridiculous. So you could argue that Bitcoin is correct, it's useful for some use cases, but it isn't good. Okay, and you also look at the experience of people who have been involved in all the different Bitcoin wallet and currency exchange scams, maybe not just Bitcoin, but crypto in general. And again, it may be correct, it may be useful, but in a lot of cases, it isn't good. Not to this entirely on crypto, but there are many other examples we could use. Okay, so quality matters from different perspectives. So quality matters differently for people who are designing and building the software than it matters for other groups. So if you're designing and building the software, you're testing the software, you want software that is easy to build. It matters that build times are quick, because otherwise you get frustrated. It matters that tests run quickly and that things are easy to test. It matters that the tools you use are available to you and run in a speedy way. It matters that the software you're working on can easily be extended, because the work that you and other developers have done in the past, you've put the effort in to make it so that the software isn't, junk. That code quality is really important to you. You've followed some kind of nice principles and some guidelines. None of that might matter to the people who operate and support the software, right? So you've got this quality from a different perspective. So you need to also have empathy for the people who can be running your software. Now, depending on how you work, it may be that you operate and support the software that you're building yourself, but it's entirely possible that there'll be other people involved in that. Now, that might be an SRE or a DevOps engineer who happens to also work embedded in your team, and it's about having that empathy for the other role in your team. Or it might be that there is an operations or some kind of platform engineering or whatever you call the department that's actually operating your software. You might have a customer service department that's kind of directly supporting the software. And they need very different things. They need to have known failure conditions. They need for this thing to be observable. They need to have quality of the product insofar as it's well documented. It doesn't produce surprises, right? There could be many other things. So it's important to kind of build those networks. If you're in the team designing and building the software, build those relationships with the people who operate and support the software, because they are part of the wider team who are helping you get the software out the door. And there are people who have the perspective of using the software, perhaps your users. This could be, depending on how your model works, your partners who are deploying the software to then be used by the end users. Could be the end users themselves. It could be internal users if you're building internal tools. But they don't really have any opinion on how the software was built, probably. They probably don't have any opinion on how the software is operated, or they probably have a good opinion, a good perspective on how it's supported. But they just want the software to work properly. They want it to be correct insofar as it makes sense to them. They want it to be good. They want it to be valuable. They have a very different perspective. So we need to also build empathy for the users of our software. We need to understand better the use of our software. So at this point, I'm going to just pause for thought for a moment, and feel free to add into the chat. How many of you have worked in roles where you've actually met a customer?
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Thanks. I've worked in teams where I was working on behalf of the customer, particularly when I was doing consultancy. So the product that we were testing was from a third party, and we were testing it on behalf of the recipient. Apart from that, I did a bit of it in my first job, but I haven't done it much since, to be honest.
Nice. That's cool. Thank you for sharing, Paul. If anyone else wants to share in the chat or come on the mic and share, you're very welcome to.
Yeah, please just unmute yourself and share.
Oh, we've got one in the chat from Simon.
Shall I read it, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is great. Heading to stand up now. We'll be catching up with the rest. Thanks, Ben, for the insightful talk. Thanks, Simon. I'll post it. I'll post the chat in the next couple of days. And Paul hosting. Yeah, I used to present iterative reviews for the customer every month.
Nice. That's great. So these are all good ways. Those iterative reviews, that kind of empathy for the users. Other ways that I've interacted with and kind of gained empathy for customers in the past. One of them more recently, and Heather Reed did a great workshop on this at a recent test bash, is learning about your users by kind of analytics, by actually tracking the data, seeing what they actually do, how they use the software. Sometimes if you don't actually have access to the users directly, you might be able to get feedback in them from other less direct ways. But in any case, this is all to say, there are different perspectives of quality, and it involves building quality software involves kind of appreciating a little bit that there are these different aspects to quality, and that in order to build that in, you have to kind of understand these different perspectives of what people might need from the software that you're building. Okay, so this is another question. Why do we build software? Okay, so why do you build software? Now, this is kind of an individual thing, like a team level thing. So why is it you got involved in building software? Why is it you're currently building the software you're building right now? I'm going to throw it out there. And I've seen this in other people, but like, we're not building software because Ben wants to learn React Native, right? Yes, I do quite want to learn React Native, and the team I'm working with at the moment is building software with that, so I'm learning it. But that's not why we're building the software, and that's not why I'm coming to work because we're building software in React Native, right? That's not the why that matters. Why are the different people who are involved in your team building software is something that's worth gaining an understanding of, right? Now, if you are at this point where you have a common purpose and your team knows why they're building software, they know why the part of the software that they're building builds into the wider system and how that provides to users, that's brilliant. If you don't know why you're building software, then it's really hard to know what part you play in your team in the game of building the software. And it's really hard to know what part your team plays in the wider squad, the wider company in achieving your goals. Like, in order to actually get to the point where you have a quality system from a building point of view, from an operating point of view, from a user point of view, spending a little bit of time to understand why you build software. So it could be your team has some kind of mission, some kind of goal. Their part of the software delivers value for some people, right? But ultimately, the reason that you're building software is because you're solving problems for other people, right? You're not building software because you want awesome software. We're building software because there are problems out there that the software helps solve. Perhaps you're helping someone do something in a more efficient way. Perhaps you're delivering software that enables people to do something they couldn't do otherwise, or enables someone to do something cheaper than the competitor does, right? There are reasons that people are using the software that you're producing. There's reasons people are buying the software you're producing, and keeping that in mind while you're building your software, while you're contributing to your team, will help you understand a little bit more about that. It's also, there's this question of like, why does your company build software? Now, this can be very different depending on your context, right? Now, I've worked in a lot of very software heavy companies where they are software companies, right? And we've built software either at the moment where we're a product company and we're building software for our users, for our partners, it's very obvious. Or I've also worked in companies where we're a consultancy and we're building software because we've got customers who've come and said, clients, this is the software we want you to build. We understand our problem. We already know our problem. We want to solve our problem in this way. Just please build us this thing. But ultimately, the reason your company is building software is to solve some kind of real world problem, right? And it's a real world problem that is something that either hasn't been solved before, or hasn't been solved before at a certain price point, or hasn't been solved before in the way that you're solving it. And please, if you are asked to build software that solves a problem that's already solved, consider not building it and buy the thing that already exists. Sometimes that's a better option. But anyway, it's really important to have this conversation about like why we build software. And it's worth remembering we build software to solve problems, to provide people with some kind of value, some kind of useful thing. And it's easy to forget that sometimes. So here's a good one. Why do we test software? Paul, why do you test software?
What do you mean? Why does my company hire me to test software, or why did I do this for a career? Not sure what you mean.
Well, why is software testing important? Why should software be tested?
Well, it should be tested because there are very serious consequences for it not being tested. In terms of, there are some places where devs do the testing. and I don't know necessarily how well they do it, but test software needs to be tested, or else it can go out with lots of bugs and not fulfill the expectations of the customer. Now that's and the seriousness of that stems from things looking bad on Facebook to absolute disasters with medical apps, you know, um, mission critical apps, lots of money lost in finance, space probes crashing into Mars. You know, these are all things that have happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very good perspective there. So, why we test software. So one of the reasons we test software, which really touches on some of the points you just had there, Paul, is to gather evidence and comply with regulations, right? So we need to test software in many contexts because we need evidence that the software has been tested, and we need to comply with regulations, right? It's factually important in some contexts that we test software and that we have evidence that we've tested it correctly. But more than that, we need to gain confidence and make better choices, right? So we test software in order to gain confidence that we're actually building the correct thing, we're building the thing that is valuable to people, and we're building the thing that is good for people, right? And make better choices. So we might do some software testing, and we've gathered some evidence and we've done some learning, right? Now, then we might make a design choice based off the testing we've done. Now, this doesn't have to be conformatory testing. This doesn't have to be about did it meet requirement X or Y. We can actually test for the usefulness, the goodness, with exploration. We can work with different people. And we go, okay, let's run a testing session to see how operable this software is. Let's run a testing session so when we put this to the operations team, they're going to be able to tell what happened. Okay, let's put it through some different failure scenarios. Okay, brilliant. Could we tell from the logs that it failed in this way? Oh, now let's make a choice to improve the logging, right? So one of the reasons is about making better choices. So it's about enabling the team to decide, should we go ahead with this change? Do we need to do more? What design choices can we make? So that's part of it. But ultimately, the reason we do testing is to help us build better software, right? That's the fundamental goal, as far as I'm concerned, that I would have proposed to you, is that it's to help us. That's the team of people in your team, perhaps the group of people in your group, the company itself, collectively, to build software that is better, that doesn't crash into Mars, that doesn't cause disasters for your users. It's about building better software. It's not about doing fancier testing. It's not about Ben learning how to test in Cypress. It's about building better software. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about sports. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how building software, and especially testing software, can be about opening doors and not goalkeeping. Or if you want to put it a different way, about goalkeeping instead of gatekeeping. So who here knows who this amazing person is on the screen? I'll give you a clue. It's in the link. So this is Mary Alps.
She's the
And
England goalkeeper, isn't she?
she is the England goalkeeper, and also plays for Manchester United. And she was in the squad in the Euro winning team, and she was already a excellent, internationally recognized, brilliant goalkeeper, one of the best in her field, going into the recent World Cup, where she made one of the most amazing contributions to the England football's team, women's England football team campaign, including saving goals in the final. In the end, we may not have gone on to win that match, but it wasn't for the fact that Mary Epps didn't do her absolute freaking best, right? She really put it in there. But a different kind of gatekeeping happened around this, right? So the kit sponsor who was selling kit for the team didn't sell, or at least initially didn't sell the kit for Mary because they thought that the goalkeeper wasn't a useful enough part of the team to sell the kit for. Oh, nobody's going to buy the shirt of the goalkeeper. So Nike didn't actually produce the shirt for people to buy. In the end, after lots of outcry, they did end up doing a small run of the shirts because it was a whole big thing. But there was some gatekeeping going on there, right? There was someone deciding that of this team of professional football players, one role matters less than the rest, right? There was some gatekeeping going on that wasn't gatekeeping about a reasonable thing about the quality of anything that was going on. There was just bias in the process there, where they were saying, no, we won't produce this shirt. Why does that matter for software testing? Why does that matter for building software? And that's because what I kind of want to say is that software testing has the opportunity to support your team to have the confidence to ship software. It also has the opportunity to, if you do it wrong, to arbitrarily do gatekeeping and to stop things without good reason or justification, right? So, there are lots of good reasons not to do gatekeeping. Goalkeeping, maybe, because stopping bugs from getting out is a good idea. But it's about working collaboratively as a team to decide, do we as a team have confidence to ship this? Do we as a team have confidence to say, this is ready to offer to our company to say, hey, this version is ready to go out? Are we happy as a company to say, yes, we've built it, it's operable, this is going to have value to the users? So it's about working together and all those parts of the team being important in order to get this software out the door, rather than kind of arbitrarily splitting up the roles, because ultimately we're dealing with people, and every different person's role is important. My sports analogy gets a little bit fuzzy there, but I've done my best. Okay, so the doom and gloom is over for the moment. We've got a really good idea that building things together is a good idea, because building things in isolation, not having empathy for people, and doing the wrong kind of gatekeeping is a bad idea. So what can we do to remove some of that isolation between different roles in the team, the isolation between the different teams in the company? So one way that I've been doing it for the last few years now is using collaborative ways of working, literally working together and doing more teamwork within the team, across teams, in various ways, in order to make improvements, to kind of go around that a bit. So when you're looking to collaborate, and I'm back to the weak sports analogies, I do apologize, scouting for talent. So when you're looking to work collaboratively, you need to decide who it is that you're going to collaborate with, right? For this particular session, for this particular point in time, this may change later, right? So you're looking for, who is it you're going to actually do that work with? As we've said before, it's a big team, it's a big company, it's a big group, it's a big industry. Okay, we're not actually going to be collaborating and working with everyone all the time. We need to choose who we're going to do that with. So we have our local talent. We have the different people in the different roles within your team, and some of the roles that I've been collaborating with to do software testing, some of the people I've been inviting to software testing sessions with me have included our data people. They've included our medical knowledge engineers, our doctors who code. And they bring some really excellent things to the software testing. Also, and I know you mentioned this earlier, Paul, the developers, right? So I've been working very closely with the developers of my team to support them to do better software testing. And some of that has been collaborating with me facilitating the sessions where me and one or more of the software developers are working together. And sometimes it's been collaborating where I've been kind of facilitating things so that multiple developers can work together and do that software testing. What I would say is, and this is back to the gatekeeping, be open to all the different roles in your team. being able to join in with building the software, right? This is a good opportunity for you to reach out to the different roles on your team and learn how you can work together to build those relationships, to build that empathy. It doesn't have to be on software testing, but we'll get to that in a moment. But it is about building together. You also can identify a neighboring squad. So you might want to find people from across different teams, and that can be very powerful, especially as we work in complex systems, right? I work in a team where at least one other team is required at all times to actually help us deliver the thing that we're building. And potentially up to 4 or 5 other teams are involved in the same piece of software for each given release, right? So teaming up with people from across different teams can be very powerful, very useful. You can also look further afield for people to collaborate with, right? You can have collaborations with people outside of the technology department. Perhaps you want to collaborate with people in marketing or in my case, medical safety, or you might want to collaborate with someone in the legal department. Perhaps you want to make sure that this data you're collecting in the new part of the system not only complies with the rules of data protection, but like the spirit of the thing, like you're really honoring your users' privacy. And you might not have the skills and talents within the team to do that, but you probably do within your company. So you can reach out to other people in wider communities. You've also got that external element, right? You can perhaps bring someone in. Now, that could be contracting someone in to come and help you, but it could also just be a collaboration with someone in the community, right? You can go out there and you can maybe do some testing together and do some learning. You can find other people to bring in. So what are we looking for in these people that we're bringing in to do collaboration with us? So we're looking for people who might have business or domain expertise. Now, this could be from a very technical point of view. So, for example, it could be that you really need a domain expert in the persistent storage of your system. You need someone who's got deep skills in databases for the particular bit of work that you're working on. But it could be more business focused, right? It could be more, let's go back to the flower analogy. It could be someone who is a horticultural expert, and you have someone who knows that there's no point ordering flowers next day after 8 o'clock in the evening, because there's no way that the person who ships it the next day is going to be able to ship flowers that have been watered at the right time, that have been prepared in the right way. There's a problem here, so we need to, I don't know, build the feature in a different way. Or in my case, I might work with probably medical quality people to make sure that the thing that we're building is safer, but also more useful. Like the doctors that I work with have a really good idea where pain points might be for our users, way beyond just what is safe. We're also looking for people with kind of, different moves, different skills, people with different experience, right? So, like I say, you might want that database expert, you might want whatever else. And this one, I cannot stress enough. People with diverse backgrounds and life experience. So, especially when I'm doing collaboration at the moment, it's predominantly running collaborative testing sessions, and the amount of kind of useful, valuable contributions people bring just by having a different background, having a different life experience, perhaps having experience of a different healthcare system, having grown up in it, having used it, having worked in it, is hugely important. So even looking at the same work from someone in the same role, but having someone who happens to have that different background and life experience can bring a huge amount to helping you design and build and test that bit of software. It's really important to have people in the room that have that kind of variety of experience and background. Okay, deep breath. So we know we want to do some collaboration. How do we actually invite other people to work with us? So a little bit of advice that works with me. Find an ally and start small. So if it's intimidating with you to throw out to your whole team, hey, I want to pair up and do some testing, some developing, some designing, whatever the thing is. If it's you've not quite built your relationship yet, you've not quite made your networks to go super far afield, start with one person. Find one ally, one person you trust, one person you get on with, and start small. Start with one session and build from there, right? That's kind of your simple starting point. Like the best thing to do is start. You don't have to wait till you've got the full team bought in to doing collaborative working. You don't have to wait till you've sold your VP of engineering on pair testing. Make time and space. So things that work well for this, regular sessions. So booking in time with someone an hour a week, one session a week where you've got a regular thing, or per sprint, perhaps it's one session for every 2 weeks. So one thing I've done recently with my team is I've set up a front end ensemble, a back end ensemble, a data ensemble, a medical ensemble. And I've created these at regular points, 1 hour, once per sprint, to focus on these different topics. But what I've done is I've not done that and only invited in the people who are medical people, data people, front end people, back end people. I've put this in our shared calendar, right? And it's often that it's the people who are in those different roles that are the primary people who join, but not exclusively. So I have managed to have other people from other roles join us to work on that particular topic. Back end people joining front end work, data people joining all sorts of testing work. That I've had some pretty good success with that. So making time that's a safe space where people feel invited, they feel like they can contribute, there's no judgment going on, everyone is allowed to join in, can be very, very useful. And the other thing is build some bridges, work with other teams, right? As I've said perhaps before, invite people from other teams to come and join you with the work that you're doing. Or find out if other teams have got something that you could contribute to. See if you can go work with them. So, what are ensembles? I've mentioned this word a few times. So let's talk a little bit about how we can use ensembles to do some collaborative working. So, an ensemble is people working together on the same task. So, in the purest sense, it's multiple people working around the same computer at the same time. And in a virtual remote world, that usually involves one person sharing the screen, one person doing the work, and other people joining in. And I will tell you a little bit more about how that works on the next slide. But ultimately, it is simultaneously multiple people working on the same task. Big shout out to Woody Zool, who now does what he calls software teaming and advanced software teaming, and go and read his stuff on YouTube, read his books. He was involved in the early days of developing what was known as mob programming, where you've got this idea of, like I say, multiple people around the screen at the same time doing the same work. And I've been doing it for a while now. Would highly recommend ensemble working. It's a lot of fun. Why is it so awesome? It's sociable and fun. Now, the ensembles I've run have been primarily, but not exclusively, software testing ensembles. And at the end of the sessions, we would have a short reflection, have a short retro to actually discuss what went well, what didn't go so well. And these different points are some of the points that came up regularly across different ensembles, different sessions. So one thing, and I found this a lot working with the medical knowledge engineers that I'd worked with who had a background in clinical kind of, being doctors, they found that working sociably, working together was a real revolution for them. So I don't know if you know much about the European way that doctors are trained, but one thing that doctors really get trained into them as part of their work is you are the one who is responsible. You work on your own, and this is a competitive world. You don't work with other people. You do your thing, and the idea that especially in a situation where people have been working remotely, where they're used to working in busy environments in offices. The idea that they could do their work sociably and together and pairing up was a bit of a revolution for them, right? And they were like, "You mean we can both do this together at the same time?" It was phenomenal. And a lot of them had a lot of fun doing it, right? They enjoyed working with their colleagues, enjoyed working on the work at the same time. Sharing knowledge is a huge part of ensembling, right? So working on the same work at the same time means that you're sharing the knowledge of the work that you're currently working on together, but there's also other knowledge sharing going on. So there's some really excellent things you can learn from watching other people doing the work that they're doing and from verbalizing the thinking behind the work that you're doing. So, for example, working with these different medical knowledge engineers, some of them would be testing. And by the way, I'm talking about testing in terms of we were testing medical models, perhaps not the same as the traditional software testing you might think of, but they had a very rigid testing process that was very well documented, very formal. And yet, when we worked together in ensembles, when we did pairing, you would actually have one of these knowledge engineers verbalizing how they do the testing, showing the tools that they use, showing the ways that they do the thinking. And the other medical knowledge engineers in the room who were following the same rigid, well trained process were like, "Oh, I didn't think about it that way. That's a new, different thing." They were having lots of aha moments, right? So, and these were people who worked in the same team, who had been working in the same team for over a year. And it was only by actually doing the same work at the same time, doing the ensemble, they were like, "Wow, I hadn't thought about it that way." And this opportunity was always available to them. And because they hadn't had this structure before, they'd been doing lots of work on their own. They hadn't intentionally shared this knowledge, and we weren't there only to share the knowledge about how other people are doing the testing, but it was a byproduct of this way of working, of running the pairing of the ensembles, that this was coming through. And final point on why ensembles are so awesome. I love ensembles. I could go on. I won't. Is that diversity of thought. And I kind of mentioned this earlier about the different backgrounds, different people you want in. People think about things differently. People who are in different roles, people who are in different headspaces, people who have different backgrounds bring different things, right? And despite being an experienced software tester who has been testing for over 10 years, there's loads of times I've been doing ensemble sessions with developers, with data people, with medical knowledge engineers, with product people, where they have thought of things to test or thought about how certain things might work I would never have dreamt to come up with, right? They are bringing more ideas where if I was doing this on my own, I would be losing out. That diversity of how they think about the world and bringing all that together as a group is super powerful. Okay, so what things can you do together? You can do example mapping. You can build models and mind maps. You can do code and design reviews. So you can run ensembles. You can run pairing to do just about anything. And these are excellent things to do together. So for those of you who haven't done example mapping, it's a really great way to like strengthen the team's understanding of your stories and to like really challenge your requirements. Very broad concept of building models and mind maps. So do build models together. If you are going to build a model, don't do it on your own. Get other people to review it with you, build it together. It's a very collaborative thing to do. So code and design reviews is an interesting one. So we often have this idea of a sprint demo, like a sprint review at the end. That works well. So Paul, I think you were saying earlier, or Simon, Simon in the chat, you were saying about how you were presenting iterative reviews to the customer every month. That's excellent. You can also do this collaboratively with code reviews. So you can work together on going, okay, we are here not with the like idea of tearing this code apart, but together we'll come together, we'll learn, we'll challenge the code, not each other, and we can do this code review. There's also other things you can do together once you've found the joy of ensembles working together. You can explore and test. This is where I've spent most of my time ensembling. You can write product code. You may already be aware of the idea of kind of pair programming or extreme programming, writing product code together and bringing in people from different roles who aren't software developers to join in with those ensembles can be very powerful. Why? Remember a few slides back, we're building software, we're testing software, not because we want to make great software, but because we are solving problems for people. And while we're writing code, we're enacting that solution for the problem. And having other people in the room who understand the business problem can really help you write better code. It can help you make better design decisions as you go through. It can be very useful to have people in the room while you're writing code. Also, you could be testing the code and writing the code as part of the same session. So the software teaming that Woody Zuhl talks about, they are designing and writing and testing the code all together. They're not separating the work out and different people are doing it. They're coming together with all the skills in the same room and doing it at the same time. And it shouldn't be a surprise you can use teamwork to accomplish all things. So running a collaborative work session. So if you've not run a collaborative work session at all, here are some tips. It's not all you need, and there are other things you can learn about this, but these are some tips. One is set a mission. So when I run collaborative testing sessions, I like to use the Elizabeth Hendrickson Explore It style charters, explore area using resource to discover information. But you can do this in other less formal ways. The important thing is that you know for this work session, for this 60 to 90 minutes, you have a mission, you have an idea of what it is that you're going to be trying to achieve. And take notes. This is especially important for software testing, where you need some kind of evidence of the testing you've done. You need to remind what you've done, but it would also be useful for other types of work session together where you're taking notes. Breakup sessions and take breaks as needed. Someone once said to me very wisely, take breaks before you know you need them, right? I would highly recommend never working for more than 90 minutes collaboratively without taking a break. Absolute maximum. Ideally, no more than about an hour. It's a very kind of intensive situation when you're pairing with different people. When you might know this from group sessions and workshops and stuff that you've done before. Take breaks, right? Make sure you're kind to yourself and others. And take time to reflect at the end of the sessions, right? Engage in continuous improvement. Make sure that you take a little bit of time to take some notes at the end. What went well, what didn't go so well, and that can help you improve and learn about how to do more collaborative sessions in the future. Okay, so we're on to the final section about some myths. So we've learned a bit about building software together, a bit about why it's hard, a bit about how we can use collaboration to kind of combat some of that. And finally, I just wanted to do a bit of myth busting. This one's a kind of bonus extra because I enjoy this one. This is like the challenges you might face. Before I actually go into my list of myths that I want to bust, if we've got people left on the call who fancy joining in, I'd love to know if you've got any myths about designing, building, developing, testing software that you'd like to share.
Sorry, shall we start the Q&A? Is that what you're saying?
No. Okay, we can get on to that if you want. I've
No,
one
sorry.
final. No, I have
carry
one
on.
final
Apologies, I
session about
misled you.
busting myths.
Okay, right, yeah.
And I was saying, if anyone wanted to bring some myths that they had to the table before I shared mine, you're welcome. Perhaps just have a think about this while I share my myths and my busting, if you wanted to add any on.
Yeah, my apologies. I misheard what you said.
That's all right, no problem, Paul. So, yeah, myths about software testing. And one of the big myths about software testing, and I know from having spent now multiple years working with developers and seeing them do great testing, the myth is that developers can't test and testers must test everything. Factually not true. There are many other people who can be involved in testing, and not all things have to then also go through a tester. right? So testing as an activity can be done by anyone. But that doesn't mean that you don't need skill in testing to do good testing. What it means is the role that you're employed at doesn't mean that you don't have these broad general skills, right? So you can coach other people to be involved in testing software. And actually, it's very important, especially for developers, that they have some involvement in the testing process, that you have that empathy between tester and developer, and you're not throwing things over the wall. So in my very direct experience, it is a myth that developers can't test. You can't test your own work. So this is an interesting one. This one is the idea that, and there is some bias, some blindness you can get that is genuine if you're testing your own work, that you can miss some things that you've seen. That is possible, and it is worthwhile. There is value getting other people to review your stuff to test your things. But it's a myth that you can't test your own work. It does involve changing your mindset. It does involve bringing a fresh perspective to the stuff you're doing. But I would actually say, if you're not testing your own work, if you're not testing your code before you're passing it on to anyone else to do further testing, you're doing yourself and the rest of your team a disservice, right? It's very important that we're all testing our own work. The really things went too far when we talk about that bias about, like I say, how you can be blind to your own stuff. That doesn't mean you shouldn't test your own work. It just means you should also get someone else involved in the process, right? So that's one myth that I've seen come a number of times. I won't dwell on all testing can be automated. I'm just going to throw that one out there and let that one sit with you. Myths about developing software. So we've had some myths about testing. Devs just Google everything. Of course, that's not true. Now they just use ChatGPT. That's not true either, right? It's a myth that everything that's involved with developing software is Googleable, is something you can find, right? Actually, the experience that developers bring to the development process is very valuable, and it's not just about Googling things. Doesn't mean they don't Google things. It's a very important skill. Doesn't mean they don't use other things to help them out, but there's a lot more to it than that. Once code is written, development is complete. I mean, I've definitely come across this myth many, many times, right? You think about all that other parts of the process that are involved in software development, all those other teams that have to be involved in order to get your product successfully out the door. Just because the code is written doesn't mean development is complete, right? Software development is about more than just writing the code. It's, also about deploying, operating, documenting, supporting, testing, right? There's so much more in getting the development finished than just finishing writing the code. Crashes are always caused by developers. Okay, it's always caused by bad developers. The reason this thing went wrong is because the developer was rubbish. Factually incorrect, right? Like most of the time, you can actually trace back problems in software not to the code that was written and the developer that was developing it, but all the way back to the team having, misspecified the requirements, or not having validated the market, or you not having kind of agreed on things correctly. You've got some kind of what's the time? Everything's a people problem. Everything's a complicated system problem. No need to perpetuate that one as a myth. And then finally, myths about collaboration. Working alone is efficient and saves time. Again, this is a difficult sell for people when they first come across this, and it's worth going and looking at the work of others on this one, like Woody Zuhl. Working alone is not always more efficient, and it doesn't save time. Why? Because you're constantly having to wait for other people, because if you're not having other people in your ensemble working on the problem with you at the time, probably that means you're creating a backlog of work for someone else that's got to happen later. You're going to end up running into things where you get blocked, right? So working on things on your own means that you're way more likely to get to a point where you're waiting on someone else, and then actually that's way less efficient. Also, you could easily go off in the wrong direction for quite some time and be building the wrong thing, or testing things in the wrong way, or designing things in the wrong way, because you're not working together with other people. So getting other people involved in the work that you're doing, whatever that work is, earlier and keeping them involved and working with them together is actually way more efficient. And actually working alone can waste a lot of time. Here's one for all of you who've ever been told that you're not technical enough or you've not been included. So there's this idea that you must be technical to collaborate or to pair program. Now, there's 2 points to argue about this myth. One is that what is technical does not just mean that you can write code. That's terrible. But also, you don't have to be in a traditional engineering role to be collaborating, right? Actually, some of the best people that I've done collaborative work with, whether it's testing or designing, or other parts of building software, is with these other roles, these other team members who aren't engineers. They're not the developers, but it's also working with the data scientists who are very technical, and actually some of them do write code, but they might be from a role that you don't normally consider. They might be product people, they might be designers. Again, I would argue they are technical, but you don't have to be technical to collaborate. And actually, collaboratively designing and testing things with your users who are not technical can be a game changer. So don't exclude people because they're technical. And finally, there's a myth that the idea that a collaborative session, a pairing session, an ensemble is just one person working while other people watch. That's not true. Actually, one of the ways ensembles work, which can be the driver navigator pattern, where one person is typing on the keyboard and clicking on the mouse, but the other people involved are genuinely a valuable part of the process, whether they're navigating and telling that person what to do, or they're simply joining in the conversation and you're working together. It's not collaborative working isn't just about one person doing the work and other people watching. That's not collaboration. Resources where you can learn more. I am very lucky to work with 2 of these people. So Lissy Hock is an absolutely fantastic person in terms of a quality engineer and someone who's involved in the community. She does lots of talks. And on her website, she has a whole collection of resources about collaborative working, about pairing, about ensembles, some of which is stuff she has written herself, but also a lot of it is links to a lot of other brilliant online resources. Big shout out to Marit. Marit has done a huge amount of work in pairing and ensemble work, and testing and pairing using automation. So she has done some really cool things with using code to do testing, to do collaboration in a way that is quite innovative and interesting, and it's really worth checking out Marit's stuff if you haven't already. Woody Zool, I've mentioned before, worth checking out his stuff. He goes around the country around the world doing workshops with people on software teaming. If you want to go and pay for his consultancy, he's also got a book somewhere if you can find it. And again, I'm very lucky to work with the enigma that is Dan Ashby, and he's the one who kind of came up a bit of this quality kind of concept that I spoke about earlier in terms of correctness, goodness, and usefulness. And if you want to check out, my blog, I'll just throw it in there again because why not be, shamelessly self-promoting. I've got some stuff there about going into more detail about running collaborative testing sessions. There's a couple of different blog posts on there. A shout out to my reviewers for this talk. So Al Goodall, Lissy Hock, and Paul Coles, excellent individuals all. I will share the slides after the presentation, so you can click these links without having to type this in. I'll put them on the meetup, and I'll get Paul to help me put them on the LinkedIn. But yeah, thank you. The talk is better for their feedback considerably. So that leads me to the end. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you very much to everyone who was listening but had to drop off partway through. Thank you to everyone who's listened to the recording. And a very big thank you to Paul and everyone else who is still on the call, listening all the way to the end. Now it is time for questions.
First of all, I would just like to say that I'm Bravo, that was a great talk. I thoroughly enjoyed that. There's lots of great stuff about teamwork and collaboration and quality. I was very impressed. And thank you for your time as well. Let me open it to the remaining people in the floor. Do you have any questions? You can either unmute yourself or you can post in the chat. It's up to you. Do you have any questions to pose to Ben? Okay. None at the moment. I've got a few questions I'd like to post if that's all right. First of all, there are some one of the things I've noticed about working in teams is that is that definitions of quality can be extremely confused, and they can also you were talking before about quality being a mixture of goodness, utility or usefulness, and correctness. However, has been said quite a few times that the person who makes a decision about quality isn't always the person who uses the application, and they have very different perspectives. Sometimes you have to pander, especially if you're doing business to business. Sometimes you have to pander to a different person who maybe checks off a list of requirements as opposed to what the users want. This is definitely the case if you're like selling to corporates. So how do you
Absolutely.
manage that in a way?
Yeah, no, that's a really good one, and this is where what I was saying about systems are complicated, right? And how we build software is complicated. So there's a genuine challenge for us to think about the different perspectives of quality that are at play, right? And you're absolutely correct that some of those wants and needs about the product. So in this term, the quality can be in terms of the fit and finish, the end result, but it can also be in terms of what features are important. It could be, very dramatic things like what is the right thing that we're building. Yeah. And some of those could be very much a conflict, especially if, like you said, um, is it the best thing for the end user? Is it the best thing for the partner you're working with or the customer that you're working with that themselves then have end users? And there is no single golden answer that I've found so far where you can do just one thing and it automatically fixes all of that.
Mm.
But spending the time to um, first of all identify that that is happening is a really big step, right? Being able to be aware enough that, okay, the stuff that the team's building is kind of being skewed in this weird way because the way our clients want this thing to happen, right? The first thing you have to do is kind of recognize that those conflicts between quality is happening. And then you have to kind of build your empathy and build your relationships, your network. So, okay, who can we work with to improve this situation, right? Who is it that's the other side to this conversation, right? Whether that is your corporate partner or whether that's your marketing team, who are the players involved that you can collaborate with to make some kind of improvement, to have some kind of influence? Not all people will want to engage with you on that. It's not always possible to fix all the problems, but definitely finding ways to spread that empathy for the people you think are being overlooked or underrepresented, especially if that's your users. That kind of advocacy is a big part of this. So figuring out whose quality perspective is being ignored and then trying to promote that to different people can be very useful.
All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. Just following on a little bit from that, if you're dealing, because I used to work in selling to corporates before, in testing applications that were being sold to corporates before I came to Australia. It was a particular challenge, I will say. Just one question about that. If you're dealing with, say, not necessarily, if the collaboration is sort of obstructed by, say, a tender document, like you have a requirement stated in the tender document, that's kind of a box checking exercise, if you will, or you're dealing with, say, a client manager as opposed to the users, and the users are a bit too far down the road, or or you're sorry, they're behind different layers. How do you manage that?
That's a great one, and I don't have all the answers for this, but
Yeah.
what I will say is that um, that is fundamentally wherever those layers of indirection exist, that is part of the challenge, right?
Mm.
That is exactly part of the challenge, and that might be layers because there are multiple teams involved within your company building the software, but that might also be layers that selling the software and selling your services to build the software involves, like you say, these tendering processes, these contracting processes. Now, it may be for things that you've already committed to. There are some immovable objects that you're going to struggle to overcome. What you could do is, if you recognize that there are problems with the process of going out to tender, that means that things are delivering software that isn't of the quality that you want to expect, that you're not able to work as a team to build better software. Find out who it is in your company who are putting together these tenders. Find out who it is who you do have some kind of control on, that are involved earlier in that process, and work with them to say, okay, look, I know you're putting together these awesome tender documents, but we're ending up with these situations where we're causing this problem where that we don't have wiggle room to support the customers downstream, right? So you can figure out who you can collaborate with to perhaps for the next tender document run an experiment, try running it a different way. Now,
Okay.
you're going to get there are challenges here because it's not necessarily going to help you build better software if you don't win the tender and you don't get the contract, right? So sometimes there are things which you won't be able to overcome only with kind of software testing and engineering, but you can see that there are different parts of the system that are broken, and you can figure out who could possibly make those things better. The
Okay, thank
extreme, of course, is you leave, you go start your own consultancy, and you think differently. Damn it! But that's a very extreme way
yeah.
of solving that problem.
It's the kind of thing that you might do later in your career as opposed to like if you're a junior tester, of course. Um, just to put it out to the participants who are still with us, do you have any questions? Please unmute yourself, or please put it in the meeting chat.
Yeah, I can
Thank
go.
you, Nuno.
Yeah, no problem. So I have like a scenario that I'm currently living that I want to get some advice, which is one of my technical managers. I have two of them, and one of them is not very keen to quality subjects. So he's not really keen to. He doesn't see the quality team as let's say a benefit, and he just rolls with it. But the other technical manager, he actually is quite on board with us and supports us. And so, how can I make make that annoying technical manager just collaborate with us more?
That's a great question, and so first of all, I mean, you can't make people collaborate with you. So this is really the fundamental thing is um, uh, there are some tricks you can do to try and make your life easier though. So let me try and give you a little bit of help. So first of all, it sounds like you already have an ally, right? You have two technical managers and one of them is already more on board. So remember what I said about start small. You've already got your ally. So one thing you could do if you're not already doing it is speak to the one technical manager you already have and try and get some advice on how to kind of approach and work with this other technical manager. The other thing is about building empathy, right? Now that's trying to build empathy in this technical manager of your situation, but also very much the other way around, right? So perhaps you need to understand a little bit more about why this technical manager isn't so keen on quality, right? Is there something that um, has been a historical problem? Is there something that you and your team are doing now that is causing this technical manager grief? Or it could be that there are some big problems going on in the rest of the system where things are burning fires. And he's like, look, things are so broken. We don't even care about the quality here yet because over here is like freaking burning. And maybe what you will actually find out is that you can figure out ways that you can help this technical manager out to improve the quality of the things you're doing, not by doing more of what you're doing now, but by offering your skills to go and help fix some of those fires over there, right? You may find that this is a cross-team problem, and that there's part of this complex system of people and software you've not got visibility of at the moment. So definitely putting in the effort to try and find out more about the situation this technical manager is operating in, more about their resistance, could be a good step. Doesn't guarantee that you'll get them on board. So I'll be interested to know how this one pans out for you. You'll feel free to follow up. I'm sure there are more things you can do. The other thing which I found is that in terms of pairing with developers, right? And this is one thing I found that, especially when I join new teams for the first time, I tend to need to show the value of the thing that I'm doing before they're interested to know that about what I'm doing at all, right? I need to have done some testing for them that has helped them out, and then demonstrate to them why it's helped them out, and they need to have seen it working before they trust that this is a useful thing, right? They won't trust it until they've got the evidence, not just general evidence, not that they've been told it, but until they've seen it work for them, they don't believe it. Now, that might be that I have to write some code and that they have to trust that I understand what it is they're doing. But it also might just be that I've done some pairing and I've done some collaboration and I've done some testing for them that they've seen works, or with someone else in the team, and someone else in the team goes to them, "Hey, Ben was brilliant helping me test this thing. He found all sorts of stuff I didn't, and he showed me this new technique." And that kind of getting someone else to be an advocate for you can also be very helpful. Did that help? I mean, obviously you don't know, you haven't tried it yet.
I think so. Just some more context. I've been here for 3 months now, so it's a quite early stage for me, and the quality team is really small. It's just me and a peer of mine, and yeah, it's just we're struggling, but we are still above water. So yeah, we'll try to. We have to know if there's some historical thing that happened that doesn't really make the technical manager on board with us. But yeah, thank you.
Sorry, could I just say a few words about that? Do you mind, Ben?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. First of all, yes, sometimes these things, I've been in situations where technical managers have expressed very little interest in the work that quality is doing, or or the work of testers. And I think, and often sometimes it's because, I think in my experience, it has been at times because of politics between managers. Or because, like, for example, a particular manager doesn't necessarily get along with the QA manager, for instance. And there are sometimes personal differences that you don't know about. And until the personal differences reside, you may not be able to necessarily get a manager on board. But there are things that you can do. Like, for example, some people, a bit like Ben suggests, they like fait accomplis. So if you're saying, I've got this strategy, I've already started working on it, I'm going to implement it to improve quality, and they're saying, all right, it's already started. All right, I'll let you continue with it, or I'll give you the backing to continue with it. Sometimes it's easier to get that through. Say asking for forgiveness rather than permission. That sometimes greases the wheels because they don't have to do any more, or they don't have to get into conflict to do any more. And And there's also another thing as well, which is it's quite possible that for a company to be to, and I would say not neglect, but not think of quality as a big priority, and that still be all right. Like, for example, early stage startups, like really early stage startups are like this, right? For them, often the first thing they have to do is to get something to market as fast as possible to beat their competitors. And the reason for that is not so much to sell it, but to get the next round of funding. So often what they'll say is, well, let's just push out features as fast as we can, or push out a minimum viable product as fast as we can, and then we'll deal with the quality once we get more funding. So I don't know what you think about this, Ben.
Well, I was thinking that really relates to this idea of a common goal, right? So it may be that the current goal of the quality team that you're in, and this may be a goal or a priority that you've been given from someone else, conflicts with the goals that this manager has, right? That you might be working to different purposes, you might be working to different priorities, and better understanding how your goals differ means you can help make decisions on, do you need to change the thing you're doing so you can help this technical manager meet their goals, or do you need to better explain why the things you're already doing contribute towards their goals, right? Like, people want to know what you're doing for them or how you're contributing in context. They don't care about your context often, unless you can build empathy for your context. Initially their stance is going to be that in their own context, right? So you need to kind of figure that out. We have a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to read it out, Paul.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted for a second. Thank you. I'll read it out. Yeah, I have a question regarding software testing software. Is it good practice when testing your code that you try putting yourself in the shoe of an idiot user? Not sure if that's the right thing to say. I'm currently working as a full stack developer, so I'm kind of in a team with myself and other senior devs.
Oh, that's a great question. Is it useful? So what I would go further than that is to say, yes, it's way worth putting yourself in the shoes of users. I would say, don't limit yourself to the so-called idiot user. Also think about the really technical users and the users who demand a lot from the software, like the demanding users. Think about all sorts of different users. So there's a technique that's about personas and persona-based testing, where you think about kind of the different types of users you have on your system, and you put yourself in the shoes not just of one user, but in kind of different categories of users, different users from different perspectives. So yes, it's absolutely a good idea to put yourself in the context of that kind of user. But what I would say is, especially as a developer, especially you're testing your own work, use your strengths to your advantage. You don't only have to test from a user point of view. That is a good thing to do. Definitely do that. But also try and think about, like, how would you like to come across this code in the future if you were trying to develop the next feature on top of it, right? You know, if you're going to be testing this, you might as well use your strengths and try and think about it from a developer point of view. So bring that as well. Don't be frightened to test your work with your set of skills that you've got. And as I've kind of probably done to death in the presentation, find other people you can work with and pair with to do that testing together, right? Test your own stuff, but invite other people to come with you on that journey. If you've got someone else you can find to work with you on
that. Thanks, Rochelle. Did that answer your question?
Oh yes, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I was like, I mean, I have like a list of users, but I was just asking if I'm doing it correctly, because I was working for them for like 4 years. So I'm just trying to double check if it's the right thing to put it that way as well.
Can I just quickly say as well that sometimes it's very hard for somebody who's for anyone who really knows the software to put themselves in the role of the so-called idiot user, because we do have a certain bias that we exhibit without the fact we know the product. So I think personas where you have a clear idea of what a person using the system is and what they want to do is probably a better bet than, say, doing what they call monkey testing, which is just smacking on the keyboard or just randomly clicking stuff, which is what kind of people think of as the idiot user in a way.
Yes, that's correct. Because there, even though if we're like putting like the right testings, but there are just some customers or users just putting their like some stuff that is not meeting the test. So that's why I have to do some kind of test that will, that will some sort of like I can back up with my codes.
So yeah, so there's a couple of sides to this. One is understanding possible failure conditions and error handling is a great thing to be testing, right? So regardless of whether your users actually go for this or not, it can also help increase your security posture. So figuring out ways that invalid inputs could mess things up is a really useful way of testing and designing software. Like having all those different scenarios about how the software could be attacked or compromised from an input point of view is a great way of thinking about the testing, whether that's from an idiot user or a deliberate attacker. What I would say in terms of user testing, I think the thing that I've often seen become a problem in terms of the perspective that I'm not paying attention to if I forget this is it's about that remembering that the software is solving a problem for someone else and remembering what that problem is, right? So actually being able to test in a way that takes into account the problem that they're trying to solve with it and figuring out, does this actually help them solve that problem, is not a trivial thing to put yourself into that mindset, right? And having someone to support you with that who has that business context, who maybe has observed users using the software or solving this problem, can be super beneficial. If you can't get the user, then someone else who knows the users can be a good analog. What else was I going to say on that one? Yeah, like I say, it's like that kind of domain knowledge about what the thing is can be really useful.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much. Rochelle, did that help? Additional info?
Yes, thank you for the insights, and I'm taking notes of that.
All right. Well, thanks. You don't have to take notes. Well, I am posting this recording on the web, so you can watch it again as well, and refresh yourself. If that helps.
Notes are always good.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, I So, are there any other questions that I'd like to anyone would like to pose? I've got a few more if nobody else has any.
Go for it. Oh wait, we've got another one. We've got another one. Let's go.
I'll read it out. Just have another a more light question. Is it a requirement in your company to be active in some way in the community? I've been with Licia and Yao Proencia. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Yao Proencia.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. In an event this summer, and they look really involved in the community, hence the question.
Oh, Licia and Joao are great. Love working with them. Absolutely love working with them. And other great people who I have the honor of working with who are really involved in the community. No, it is not a requirement, but there is some support for it, which is really awesome. For context, if you know Dan Ashby, who is very involved in the software testing community, Dan Ashby at one point in time at Ada Health was the director of quality services, and he helped build out the QE team and hire the QE team at Ada Health. So, and he did some of that by pulling on the software testing community that is already out there doing awesome things. So, yeah, not a requirement, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity, the fact I get to work with some of these amazing quality engineers. So it is a privilege to do.
Really good. Thank you.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions that I have. First of all, Do you think that have you tried certain things that have been established as part of traditional Agile in terms of putting different multidisciplinary teams together? Like, for example, regarding requirements, say the three amigos approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just what have I done there? Yes. So we call it three hats in my context because we're trying to get away from the, I don't know, connotations of the idea of amigos because it's kind of male and it's a very much like the thing. But yes, the getting different hats together, doing some kind of pre-refinement stuff like this can be very useful. Can be very beneficial. Those kind of stuff do work, and is good collaboration. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, we do it where I work, and it does make a big difference, actually. The only thing is sometimes it's sometimes hard to find the exact composition of the team that works for us for specific projects, and we're still trying to, me and the CTO and I are still mulling over that, trying to find the right groups of people from external teams. But when we do it, it really works. So, and we are trying to bring people together to, we have a series of internal users who use the application a lot because they prepare work for others, for our clients, and we do show and tells with them, and we try and involve them in all aspects of the requirements and the viewing the process of the application from start to end, the dev.
Cool.
It's not perfect yet. There's a lot we still haven't done to get that working regularly, but we are getting there. The question that I have, the final question, I suppose, is in the context of the market at the moment, in terms of, say, there's been a lot of companies that have done layoffs. Teams are having extra burden in terms of their individual work. There's not enough people. There are dev teams that have been cut down quite a lot to the bone, and people are having to take a lot more of a burden. Have you noticed it harder to be able to get people from interdisciplinary teams in to work on these collaborative ensembles, or are they kind of, first of all, do you have the right people now? Have you heard of instances where teams no longer have the right people because people have gone or have been made redundant, or is it, or are they just saying or are people saying they just have too much work on and there's no one to delegate?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, it's important to note that I've been at Ada for just over 2 years now, so I don't have full context of where other companies are at and with their layoffs. So I imagine there is some of that pressure going on, but I don't have full visibility of that, so I'm not going to talk to the context of others. What I will say is that kind of resistance in terms of time is real, right? In terms of getting people involved in the pairing and in the collaboration, and not always having access to the right people is also absolutely a normal part of the challenge that any team has for whatever reason that is, whether the person just isn't currently available or whether you don't have the right people to come out to you. What I would say is this is where showing the value and growing kind of comes from, right? So let me tell you a little bit of a story. So the team that I was working with, actually, they weren't the team I was in. This is where I was working with a group of people who were in an adjacent team. These were the medical knowledge engineers at the time. I made some time with them, starting just with one person, where regularly every week I would do 1 hour with them on a Monday, right? And to start with, it would be with one person, and we did some testing together for 1 hour for the first kind of week. Then they were like, "Oh, this is great. Can I bring in this other person from my team, and can they join us?" I'm like, yeah, of course you can. And we kind of built things up slowly. So first we brought one other person in, then we brought a second other person in, and then we started to bring in other people like on a rotation from this team I was working with. And by the time we'd got kind of 4 or 5 weeks into the process, we had a list of people who were asking to join. So we'd gone from a place where at the beginning people weren't really too sure and they didn't kind of see the value in it, to the point where the people who had previously been involved were going and talking to us, oh, this was a lot of fun, this was a brilliant thing, they've got involved. You need to come in and try this out. You need to give this a go, right? So it's the kind of thing where you can build momentum over time. What you're not going to do is go from a standing start to dealing with all the resistance in one go, right? Start by like pushing on the easier, more open doors, finding your allies and building up, and then kind of let it build over time, right? I also would never force someone to like ensemble with me, right? Like it's an invitation, right? It's a way of working I promote, but it's not something I would demand people to do if they really don't want to, if there's a really good reason that they don't want to. There is one other slightly more, not sneaky is the wrong word, but there is another way to approach it. The other way to approach it is simply by asking someone for help. And it's not really in an ensemble, but it would be pairing, right? And if there's a really good reason you need to do some collaboration with someone and it's going to be one-to-one and this person doesn't have a lot of time, right? Make it as relevant as possible to the work that you and they are doing. Don't make up something else to do some ensembling. Don't make up something else to do the pairing. Pair on the work you're already busy with, right? And make it really obvious to this other person the expectations you have on them and the reason you want them, right? You know how we did all this scouting for talent stuff, right? There's a reason you want this person to work with you. There's a reason they have some skill or experience that you don't have, that you want them doing this thing. Make that explicit. Say, hey, I'm working on this ticket and I could really do with your help on this thing. Can we have half an hour and can you help me do this piece of work, right? So it doesn't always have to be a big song and a dance. You don't have to call it an ensemble. Working collaboratively can sometimes just be as simple as asking for help.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. It's really great answer. I appreciate that. I've got to say a couple of things in the chat. Rochelle has had to leave, but says, great, got to go now. I have some other things to do. Thank you for tonight. Nice meeting you all. So that was a really nice message from Rochelle. Thank you. And Premlata says, got to go. It was really nice and quite insightful meeting. Thanks, Ben and Paul. Well, thank you, Ben, particularly as a person who's doing such a great presentation. So I'm just trying to think. I haven't got any other questions, at least none that come to mind. Nuno, do you, as the person who's still on the call, do you have any further questions?
No.
All right. Well, in that case, we'll wrap it up now. But can I just have a chat with you after the video recording stops?
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for coming. And for those people who are watching on the video, I'll stop the recording in a minute. Thank you for watching. I was originally going to leave it a few days, but considering I think part of the reason why we haven't had a load of people attend tonight is because it's quite late by Sydney standards. It's 6:30. I might just post it immediately, actually. Because there might be mitigating circumstances why there haven't been many people, that we've only had about 10 people attending. So I think that there's, so I'm going to post it immediately. And I just want to say to Nuno and to everyone who's attended, but particularly to Ben, who's done such a great presentation and something we can all take things away from. Thank you so much. And it's been such a pleasure having you. Just to point out to people who are watching the video that we will be doing another talk on the 20, I've forgotten the date actually. It's the, I think it's the 21st of November. It's a talk by Baz Dijkstra. So we hope to see you there. That will be online and free as well. So just feel free to join that. Thank you so much. Ben, please stay on for a bit. Thank you. Have a good night.